The Karate Kid Part 2 is the second installment of the Karate Kid franchise and a commercial peak for the series that inspired a wave of merchandising opportunities and spawned one product that likely traumatized an entire generation of parents in the 1980s. Gone are the days of teen drama and the quaint notion of settling your differences in a regional karate tournament. The Karate Kid Part 2 takes a hard left into an action-adventure, life-or-death melodrama whose impact would be felt through many iterations to come. And we're going to go through every one of them, as we explore every entry in the Karate Kid franchise leading up to the grand revitalization that is Cobra Kai. This is part 2 of how the Karate Kid movie franchise was crushed by the weight of its own insanity, only to fully own its ridiculous history and ride that insanity full tilt into the 21st century. 2 quick things to keep in mind before we get started. Number 1, casting changes. As has become apparent over the course of the Cobra Kai series, the Karate Kid franchise really thrives on the foundation of a great ensemble cast, and the original film had this in spades. Johnny, Ali, Kreese, and Mrs. LaRusso are all cornerstones of the franchise whose roles in the first film are integral to the development of our main character and what forms the launching pad for the series as a whole. So naturally, the sequel would strip the entire cast of the first film down to just Daniel and Miyagi in favor of a brand new roster of largely one-dimensional versions of their original archetypes. Johnny and Kreese get an epilogue at the start of Part 2, and it's pretty par for the course for a series to move on to new villains in the following film. Elizabeth Shue had scheduling conflicts that prevented her from coming back to wrap up her story, and Randy Heller returns for a quick cameo at the start of Part 3, but it felt especially ashamed to completely lose out on both Ali and Mrs. LaRusso for the sequel, as they were both really grounded and nuanced characters that weren't afraid to challenge our protagonist and really inform who they are as a person. The cast of Karate Kid 2 feel a little underwritten comparatively and mostly just present to help the story along. But thankfully, actors Tamlin Tomita and Nobu McCarthy add a lot of chemistry and depth to their roles. In addition to Danny Kamakoma and Yuji Okamoto's completely unhinged performances as the story's villains, which round out the cast as an ensemble that's pretty far from what's presented in the original movie, but still pretty cool and iconic to the series in its own right. Number 2, the car window scene. In the completely insane opening to the Karate Kid Part 2, we see Kreese absolutely destroy both hands by accidentally putting them through car windows. Because of an issue with the special effect, actor Martin Kove actually ended up punching through the window for real and suffering severe injury during the shooting of the scene. Much like we would see happen years later when professional wrestler Bill Goldberg would attempt a similar stunt, except completely on the fly in a fit of anger that would result in nearly life-threatening lacerations that almost caused the wrestler to lose his arm. All this to say, if you ever find yourself really frustrated in a parking lot and think punching through windows seems like a cool and reasonable thing to do, just remember what happened to 2 of the biggest badasses in the 80s and 90s, and maybe just settle for honking the horn. This scene, which was originally planned as the end of the first film, also marks a key moment in Karate Kid history as it would see the final appearance of Johnny Lawrence in the franchise for over 30 years. As Miyagi and Daniel exit the scene, we get a pretty bizarre exchange between the two, where Daniel asks,
"You could have killed him, couldn't you?"
Right.
Well, why didn't you then?
The question of why the most non-violent and level-headed character in the entire franchise would opt not to murder someone in cold blood in a parking lot full of onlookers is a mystery for the ages. But this exchange essentially sets the table for the overall change in stakes we'll be dealing with throughout the film's runtime. Although still titled The Karate Kid, this only our second entry in the series sees our eponymous hero taking on a supporting role as the spotlight is firmly centered on Miyagi. Once a humble maintenance man with a tragic backstory grounded in the very real horrors of American history, Miyagi suddenly finds himself embroiled in a decades-long blood feud when his childhood best friend turned crazed millionaire demands a fight to the death with the fate of the livelihood of the entire village at stake. Everything in this movie is essentially jacked up to 11 as we're introduced to the limitless resources of industrialist and franchisee Sato and his completely unhinged nephew, Chozen. No, not that Chozen. Chozen Taguchi. One of the coolest and probably most terrifying characters of the entire franchise, with the exception of maybe that scary little kid from the 2010 movie. Even Daniel's training regimen in this film goes from the modest, hardworking task of learning muscle memory through repetitive chores to having to dodge a gigantic spike trying to impale you on a platform, which was also the hardest part of the video game. The central theme of the film's narrative revolves around the concept of honor.
Honor.
It's a word that's mentioned continuously throughout the story and is the driving force for essentially all of Miyagi and Sato's actions. The word honor in this film functions much in the same way as the word freedom has come to be used in our reality as of late, in the sense that in this universe, it seems to mean completely different things to different people. To Sato, honor is something that is owed, something he feels innately entitled to, and essentially an excuse to be a complete asshole in any situation and do whatever he wants at the expense of the lives and livelihoods of everyone around him. Sato wields the term honor like a weapon, willing to destroy an entire village over a decades-old point of personal pride and unwilling to listen to anyone around him urging him to seriously chill. Miyagi, on the other hand, views honor as a responsibility, something that is sacred and earned, where every decision taken is selfless and for the betterment of others. To Miyagi, honor means staying true to his principles and protecting those around him. Even after Sato's thugs ransack his ancestral home and destroy ancient family artifacts, something that would become a bit of a trend in the series, Miyagi still holds true to his personal code and only concedes to fight Sato as a last resort, essentially preparing to sacrifice his own life to save his village. Much like Sato, Chozen also uses the term honor as free rein to be a complete maniac while regularly ripping off poor farmers on the side. They even share a catchphrase.
Coward. Coward. Coward.
Coward! Coward!
Coward.
Coward!
Coward!
Which they're happy to scream out at anyone, anytime things don't work out their way. In the end, Sato is shown the error of his ways through Miyagi's act of mercy, but not enough to try to redeem Chozen, who's summarily ousted from the family and predictably snaps, taking a page from his uncle's playbook by throwing a huge tantrum and threatening to kill people. Even though our main protagonist takes a backseat in a movie that could essentially be called Miyagi, our titular hero still manages to save the day in what shakes out to be a pretty brutal fight in the end. But more importantly, Daniel's character in the film serves as an avatar, allowing the audience to experience Miyagi's world through his eyes while taking on brave new adventures and still focusing on the things that made the first movie so special to begin with. The Karate Kid Part 2 teaches us that sometimes major changes can be a good thing, that enriches our enjoyment of a familiar concept and adds whole new elements to what easily could have been just another lame Hollywood sequel. The importance of honor and selflessness in the face of arrogance and greed are lessons that still hold true today, and might be worth considering if you ever find yourself as part of a crazed band of maniacs trying to destroy everyone else's livelihood for their own petty self-interest. You know, in case that ever happens. And those are my thoughts on The Karate Kid Part 2. I hope you'll join us in our next installment on The Karate Kid Part 3, where nostalgia makes its comeback in the series, but cartoon villains still reign supreme. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider donating to our Patreon to help us continue making more in the future. And like, subscribe, and share to your friends who you think might like it. Thanks again for watching.